Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas P. DiGero, and I have the pleasure and honor of having Brendan Spencer on my channel today. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for, having me.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I'm so glad you were able to come on here on such short notice. So thank you once again. For people that aren't aware of who you are and what you're all about, if you want to give an introduction of yourself and the content that you create and what you're all about.
Sure, sure. Well, I use the term, I am a nobody yet somebody. I am just a normal, a normal individual, and I say normal at its etymological roots. According, to that which is right, the Carpenter Square. I don't really focus so much or talk about myself because I don't want people to lose sight of the information. But how I was just someone who just stumbled on some knowledge, and through pattern recognition, and through my own intuition, I just was able to start to put pieces together, and came across Mark Paschal's work, and how natural law. I was studying pretty much all the work on natural law from other people, like Chris Nelson, um um Lysander Spooner, like all the philosophers. He loved Socrates, and what he said about how government and trying to influence the minds of the youth, and just pretty much was just realizing that I had to go within myself, and that's what how I've been doing, and that's why a lot of my work focuses on like the mental, you know, the internal realm, because that's where our problems really lie. We have to get out of these schisms, we have to get out of these forms of internal contradiction, and ultimately come to an understanding of objective morality and natural law, and try to really focus on freedom and dedicate our lives to truth. Service to others is fine, but service to truth, service to what is right, service to to that which is moral, that should come first. And that's really what that I try to focus on, because when I go out and talk to people, it's extremely bad out there, man. People's minds are literally held in a cage, held in a box. So that's what I try to show and try to influence, within people, is to to challenge your own beliefs, look within yourself, look at the way you behave, look at what you think is true, and especially what like what you think about your own self. So that's what my work, really covers, is the internal realms and the mental and the heart aspects of care. Because without, have true care, they don't expect true change.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I remember listening to you when you called in on Mark Paschal's show during the Matrix 4 call-in episode, and just how soft-spoken you were, and you're really good with your words, and it really resonated with me what you were saying. And so I checked out your One Great Work Network channel, and I haven't delved into anything really yet besides the interview with Melissa, like I told you off air. But I'm very interested in the topics that you cover because it's very near and dear to my heart, the whole trauma, shadow work aspect, and it's very, very important. And like you're saying, people's minds are in cages right now, and a lot of that has to do with their own personal trauma, and then them seeking for external sources in order to kind of deal with that, or kind of maybe just put that in the back of their mind so they're not focused on that. Maybe focus on more the bread and circus instead of what's really going on. Which even for me, I
Yep.
can still be scared. Even doing a lot of shadow work, I can still be frightened of not like watching anything and just sitting in my room. I can still be like that. So it's
Yeah.
not where it's just a one and done type of thing, and it's a continuous process. And I think it's extremely important. So we're definitely gonna be talking about trauma later on, which I'm very excited about. But when we're talking about natural law right at the end, if for someone that's hasn't watched the past probably 4 interviews I've done, if they're not aware of
Yeah.
what natural law is, if you want to kind of just break down what that is and then why it's so fundamental in order for us to attain freedom.
All right. Natural law is a set of universal, non-man-made, binding, immutable conditions that governs the consequence of holistic beings' behavior. So you can look at it in a sense as a cause and effect, based on we are the causers, so our means of behavior that we put out into the world, you know, the behaviors and actions that we do to others, that is governed by law, that has consequences. So it's simple. If you put out good, moral, and right behaviors, then you will receive good and moral, right behaviors back in a collective, sense, because um we're really talking about from a collective, standpoint. And just at the same, if you put out bad and immoral, wrong behaviors, then you're going to get back bad, wrong, and immoral, behaviors. So it has been referred to in the golden rule: do unto others as you want done unto yourself. But I like to, look at it in the apathetic sense, in the negative. Do not do unto others as you would not want done unto you. And the reason why I say that is because looking at it from that standpoint is so much more powerful, because I mean, people's mindsets are twisted, so they may want you to do something, that is perverted, but that individual knows what they don't want done to them, because they know the feelings that have come, from the, that internal, emotions, and what it feels like to be wrong, because we all have, been wrong. So we all knows what it feels like. We all knows, you feel it in the gut. It makes you feel like crap. It makes you feel like shit, and you don't really want to experience that, those feelings again. So we all know what it means. So you don't want to put someone else in that same position of feeling. So do not do unto others as you would not want done unto you. And it is just pretty much like karma, in a sense. And it has many names. You can call it the universal law. You can call it God's law. You can call it the law of cause and effect, the law of right action. I don't care what you call it. It's just knowing that it is, knowing that it is real, knowing that it will always be above you, and aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions to that which is, natural law.
Yeah, thank you for that great explanation. I appreciate it. And for people that are still kind of thinking like, okay, what does this have to do with freedom?
You're
What would
right.
be a good way to break that down for someone that's curious about that?
Okay, you have to remember that we live in a world of infinite potential. We live in a universe of infinite potential. So there are rules here. A lot of people think that they are the maker of those rules. So, we co-create together. So it is in coming and working together, we have to, we have to have a set of principles. We have to have a foundational level to build off of, because without that foundational level, nothing is going to spring out of that. So that's what natural law is supposed to teach us, is there are rules here, and these are the foundational rules when it comes to interacting with other, beings. So knowing how to treat people, knowing what is right and wrong, and you can almost consider it the form of ethics. If you have two people who are coming to work together, um on an individual level, if it was no one here, okay, yeah, you can do pretty much, have what you want, because there wouldn't be as much consequences, because you're not bringing detriment to someone else's life. But because that is not the case, we share this world with other, other people and other beings, then we have to have a set of guidelines, a set of principles. And it's not that we are creating these principles are set in stone. So that's what, it is supposed to teach us, is a set of principles, because these principles are within our own self, and they exist throughout the cosmos, because natural law is supposed to teach you to go within. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It is supposed to teach you to go within yourself. You learn how to treat yourself, and then and then you radiate that by treating others the same way. It's like the old saying: as you harm another, you harm yourself. And ultimately, that's how we get to freedom, because then you were talking about, the law of freedom. As morality increases in the aggregate, then freedom increases in the aggregate. And the reason for that is because you know how to treat other people. You are not trampling on their rights. You are not using means of coercion. You are not using means of theft. You are not using means of aggression. Just as, in its opposite, as immorality increases in the aggregate, then slavery will increase, because then you have this moral relativistic mindset, thinking that you are the creator of right and wrong. You can do, whatever you want to do. So you're not worried, or you don't care what, about someone else's property. You would just go out and take. And if everyone has that same, mentality, this whole dog eat dog world, how can you really trust anyone? How can you ever really come together to get anything done? You can't. It creates a world of chaos. It creates a world in entropy. And that's why an understanding of natural law is so important, because it truly gets you to understand yourself and the laws of nature that we are all bound to.
Excellent description. I really appreciate that. Yeah, because it's just the way you broke it down. It's awesome. Because yeah, and when you how you were saying at the end, if we all started acting that way, where it's just up in the air, we can do whatever we want. It's gonna create chaos. So then,
Yeah.
because of that symptom, from the root cause of doing wrong action, people think, okay, the solution, now I know what we have to do. We have to put more laws in place. We have to have more restrictions. We have to have fines. We have to have all this
Yeah,
stuff. And you don't do this because you're going to be punished, or do this because you're going to be rewarded, not don't do this because it's the wrong thing to do. And
right.
that's it. And do this because it's the right thing to do. But now we're coercing people, and we do the little, like what parents do, the little reward punishment mentality and method of teaching kids what to do or how to do
That's
what.
class. Yeah, that's classical condition. B.F. Skinner, with Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson. The whole training or indoctrination, and that's what you do is you get them in the stimulus response animalistic mindset, and you reward good behavior. You reward the behavior that you want your subject to continue, and then you use punishment as a form to weed out bad behavior. Because once again, it goes back to, we all know what it means to be wrong. We all know what it feels to be wrong. So if you punish these behaviors that you don't want them, to do, then over time, through means of repetition and through what a form of negative punishment, then you can weed out certain behaviors. And this is actually brought about in the early 1900s with how behaviorism, and they figured all of this out. How when psychology was booming, how you had Sigmund Freud doing the whole psychoanalytical stuff, but you had another field in psychology which was behaviorism, and they was trying to figure out, how does the mind operate. And they took the whole consciousness out and the whole spiritual aspect of out, and just left it to an animalistic mindset. That's why we see a lot of people acting and operating like animals, because they've been conditioned and programmed just like animals.
Yeah, and wow, that's a great explanation. Jeez. Yeah, because even with me, with my dad, he obviously did the whole punishment reward thing. I was hit as a kid,
Yeah,
and there's times where I was scared to do something or to ask for help or to do whatever because I was in fear of being hit or being screamed at, whatever it was, and that creates, yeah, maybe I can be obedient, but does that garner any sort of respect in the long run? No, it doesn't, and it
yeah,
it, it didn't build any respect in that sense. And it was, yeah, it was more fear based. I can't do this, guys, because my dad's gonna hit me or I'm gonna get in big
yeah,
trouble. I'm not gonna do this because it's the wrong thing to do. And I wasn't taught right and wrong. My mom told me about the golden rule, but we never had any sort of concrete understanding. So it was still a little bit up in the air and all that stuff. So yeah, it's really crazy seeing some people's mindsets out there, especially when I've gone to some of these vaccine mandate protests and some of the people that are against it. No conversation, just drop dead or fuck off, or they're flipping me off
yeah.
while they're driving past. No sort of discussion whatsoever, nothing practical at all. We don't get
They're
anywhere with
soulless.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They're so dead.
yeah, and they think that we're the bad guys, even though we just have all these positive messages on our, especially me. Like
Yeah,
I don't do any of that politics garbage, so it's not divisive at all. It's just they don't have the right to do this or anything. So yeah, it's really just sad. And going along with that, with the whole conditioning and we need more control in order to rein these people in because there's all these bad actors. So with government, um, if you want to break down the word of government and what that really means and why we should be opposed to this type of coercive collectivizing.
yes. Well, you have the word, government, which is made up of two words, govern and ment. So let's take the first word, govern. That comes from gubernare. And that was, to control, to pilot, to steer. So let's say right now, I am governing this pen because I am the one who is in control of it. I am governing, have this mouse because I am the one who is, piloting it. I am steering that. So then you have the suffix ment, ment. Well, that means um, your mentality, mind in Latin. We get words like, mental, have mentality, have mental, hospital. So you combine the two words and you get, have mind control, or to control the mind, to stir the mind, to pilot the mind, which is exactly what government is. Because if you control people at the foundational level, this is what one of the first principles of natural law is the universe is mind, all forms of creation come from our mind. So they are controlling people from the foundational level, because physical slavery didn't really work as well. It got too much kickback. People complained, people didn't work as hard, so they created this matrix. You create them, I'm sorry, how you control them at the foundational level, which is here within the mind. You let the idiots think that they are free. You let them think that they are, have making decisions. You let them think that they are governing their own lives, but in actuality, they are not, because the government is mind control. The government is slavery. That's why they use these techniques, to control your mind. That's why they use, subliminal messages, neuro linguistic programming. They pervert symbols. And these are all techniques used in mind control. And mind you, this knowledge is not evil. This same knowledge can be used, for good, for my influence. But because we are dealing with psychopaths and people who haven't done any shadow work, these people are being, led by their own childlike ego, then they are using it in a perverted form. Which is why we need to put on our armor and tools and understanding how mind control works. We need to get into this knowledge. We need to dive into the occult, regardless of what anyone tells you. Because how are we going to even this playing field? How are we going to use, you know, this knowledge as a means of defense? Because hell, without it, you're done. I mean, because hell, once again, they are controlling you at the base root level, which is in your mind. And that's why so many people can't see it, because they're focused on the physical. They are focused on the external. They think they are just going to take action. But in actuality, it's not right action, because they still control your mind. And if they control your mind, then they control the way you think. Hell, they control the ideas. Hell, they control your worldview, and they're going to control the way you feel. And ultimately, they're going to control the way that you behave.
Yeah. And is even in my own personal life, like having two parents that were always fighting, and one would give me one story, another would give me another, and I'd be able to say, you know what, I cannot verify this at all. I'll take in both, and I'll sit on it. If any new information comes, I'll have a better understanding at least. So like my truth discovery mechanisms were being developed as I was a kid. And I
Mhm.
always had the inclination to not follow something when it made no sense to me. So even with that foundational understanding, I was still wrapped up in this. Like I was watching Fox News from 2008 to 2013. And then I was watching Young Turks, the opposite side of the spectrum. And then that was for like 2 years, and I was paying to
Yeah.
watch them. What a joke. And like, even I was still in that box of like, how it this is how it runs. These people have suits and they have PhDs. They spend all these years in school, so this must be the best way to do things, right?
Yeah.
There can't be any other way. And even with that kind of fundamental kind of understanding that I was having, and as a child, I still was caught up in this, and I still was thinking, oh, I'm so glad to be an American. Oh, we're the police of the world, and all that stuff. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until I watched like the Zeitgeist films where I was really seeing that, wow, there really is more potential out there, that we could really do other things. And I don't think Peter Joseph is on any sort of right track. I've been interacting with him on Twitter and stuff, but he thinks COVID's real and morality is just a human construct and stuff like that. So
It's a
um,
mental illness.
yeah, and I definitely want. I would like to see like like a decentralized, resource based economy type of thing, but obviously not controlled centrally or anything like that, but way decentralized. We can use technology to help us out. That
Yeah.
makes sense. But yeah, even I can definitely see how people with like a weaker mental like willpower can really fall victim to this stuff. And it's just so much easier and so much simpler to just say, okay, it's just these people in government. We just got to get new people in. And
Right.
and if we don't do this, it's going to be chaos and stuff like that. So I can totally empathize with people, but that doesn't change the fact that you guys are helping this thing continue,
Right.
and it's not
Yeah.
right. And
They
so
are still supporting slavery. Yeah.
yeah. And before we get into mind control and its methods and how we can protect ourselves from it, I'd like to just discuss the whole concept of government and uh, moral relativity, moral
Yeah.
relativism. If you want to delve into that and why that is, I mean, that being a part of government is just so insidious. So if you want to delve into
Well,
that a bit.
yeah. You have to understand that in this world, you can't create anything with just one. You always need two things, to create a fire. I mean, you can't just create a fire with just one, have one thing. So we have to look at, the internal realm is, we have the masculine and feminine, and that is projected on the physical level as, have male, female. And that is what the government actually claims to be is the proxy parents. And the reason for this is because the government creates trauma. Hell, the government has created so much trauma, it has destabilized our own families. This is a dialectic, and it is in this trauma, how we are hurt, how we are harmed, and then therefore we don't never really heal. How we don't never really truly go within our own selves, or how taking the proper love and the proper knowledge. So it gets us to look outside of ourselves in these institutions, looking for that mommy or looking for that daddy, because we want to be loved, how we want to be nurtured, how we want those kisses, how we want that titty in our mouth. So that's what the government actually proclaims to be. That's why it tells you what to do. Like, hey, you can't have those firearms. Hey, you can't do this. Just like mommy and daddy, how would tell you, hey, you can't stay up late. Hey, you need to be back by this sort of time. Um, that's what the government claims to be, is a proxy mommy and daddy. And we have to look at the family dynamic and on how it has been destroyed. It has been literally obliterated. And the whole concept, or the whole problem with moral relativism, is not only is government claiming to be the proxy parent, but it's also claiming to be God, because we have given up so much of our own power to the government. It's like in the Lord of the Rings, the whole ring of Sauron. People go and join the government. They think they're going to create some change. So you have this illusion like, hey, I can do some good. But the problem is, that power will corrupt anyone. And if you don't think that, you are fucking lying to yourself. I know if I join government, that power will corrupt me, which is why I would never ever join government. And the whole concept of government is, it is based on violence and coercion and theft, all wrongdoings. And it claimed that, oh, because y'all put us in charge, we have a moral right to rule you. But if me and my homies, or me and my boys, did the same thing that government did, we would go to jail. And that's lucky. They would send the goon squad to come bash our heads in, you know. So government claims to make what is right because they claim to be the authority. And authority has the main word author. An author is one who makes, one who writes, or one who creates. So the people in government use techniques, use homophones, they use green language, they use NLP to write, WRITE, a right, RIGHT, or write a wrong on paper, and then you have the illusion that it has some form of power. The whole idea of the pen is mightier, is mightier held in a sword. Well, because they get you to believe, to buy into that through means of mind control. Then therefore they can scribble wrongs down on paper that gives them the power, give them the jurisdiction, which the word jurisdiction, yus or juris, law or right, and diction, dictate, to say, to speak. They get to speak the law. And that's the problem, is they are just claiming to be, the ones who can make what is right. And that's why whenever a new tyrant comes, hell, in office, they change, hell, what is right. Hell, they change what you can do, to the point to where it creates a distortion. It creates confusion within yourself, because how you was buying into one form, and then how this next dictator comes into office and then completely changes it. How once again that creates a schism within your own mind, because if something was right, how yesterday, then how can it be wrong, how today? How once again this creates a schism within your own mind. This is what leads people to those polar hell extremes. This is what creates wrong forms of duality. And it is in this confusion they continue to help to control, because government is nothing more than divide and conquer. It is the oldest tactic that they have used. This goes back to what Egypt, hell, Samaria. It is divide and conquer, because remember, these people go to school for political science. It is nothing more but the clever art of deception, of using tactics of deceit, of lying, of thievery, to steal from people, to coerce people, to divide people. Because hell, once again, government is based on violence. It is based on coercion. It is based on means of threat. It is nothing more than organized crime, except people think that they have the right to go out and use violence. But if you and I went out and did the same things, we would be thrown in a cage. but yet somehow the government can do it and it's morally right. And then they'll come up with this bullshit, the whole social contract, the whole social contract. It's like I never signed shit, so this social contract is another form of mind control. Hell, when people use that, it's like no, it has no validity because hell, number one, you can't write anything on like on paper to legitimize slavery. You can't write anything on paper to legitimize wrong, because hell, then again it gets back to the whole concept of objective morality versus subjective morality. So anyone who is believing that a social contract is somehow fucking right, you are buying into subjective morality and you are buying into moral relativism, because that's what government is based off of, is moral relativism. Because in this idea of moral relativism, they can justify their behaviors, which continues to keep them in power, and therefore that we do those same behaviors, but they justify them as being wrongdoing. So that's really what moral relativism does, and why government uses this is because it keeps them in power, because they are the ones who have that pen and can write anything on paper, and then therefore hell, the slave class, hell, the peons, the ants, we can never really do anything to hell usurp that power or take back our own power, because we still believe in this dangerous ideology of moral relativism.
Yeah, and it's also where perfect example, just like cannabis, it was deemed illegal and terrible for all these decades and decades, and then all of a sudden in 2020 in Illinois, oh, it's a right.
Yeah,
You can grow some now, but only five. You can only have five plants outside your house, no more than that. Why not more than five? Ah, just because I don't know. We just drew straws and we thought five was good number. It was a little odd number, but it's fine. So it's like it just doesn't make any fucking sense. And
yeah,
I remember I did like in 2020 or 2019, I did some shrooms outside my house and I had like 10 plants out there, 10 weed plants. And I'm just really thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I would love for a cop to come up here and try to take this thing from me. You'd have to put me in the fucking ground if you're gonna take this
yeah.
from me. Yeah, people would be like, "Oh, that's taking it too far. It's just a plant." Oh, well, no, it's the principle of the thing. You don't have any right to
Thank you.
do it, you little thug. I'm sorry. Like, and it was just making so much sense. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know what? Creation or like natural law or God, it just is what it is. Like, and I was making so much sense when I was on it. I wish someone recorded me, but it's just such a passion because it just makes so much sense now, and it's just, and you can see it in the world. Look at how the world is right now, and what
Yep.
are our beliefs in the aggregate. That's it. It's
Yeah.
really that simple. And then like just put I have applied it in my own life. I worked at Aldi. I dumpster dove for months and months, and I stood up and said, I'm not doing anything wrong. I got fired for it. And I said, I don't care. I would have quit if you guys didn't fire me because I don't want to work for you people. I had no job lined up. Within a day, I already had another job lined up, making twice as much cash. And granted, karma doesn't always work that way, where it's just the same day. But for me, it did
Yeah.
end up happening that way. And I didn't have any sort of fear. I didn't have anything like that because I just knew I was in the right. And that was my protection. Like I mean, that's why I don't think a cop has stumbled upon my weed, because maybe just creation just knows that I'm willing to die for it. And, so they just don't put that kind of thing in my life right now. Cause
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not lacing it with something and selling it to the little teenagers or something like that, so it's not doing anything wrong with
Right.
it. It's just a plant. It's no different than my basil or my parsley. It's just ridiculous.
Yep.
And it's just that one example. And then just extrapolate that to all these other stupid things. And it's because we don't have personal responsibility. And we're just like you're saying, like as we're being brought up, like that kind of that reward punishment. And we are kind of like animals. So people do say, oh, it would be chaos if all these rules went away. And yeah, it's like having a kid where you're so like you have such a tight grip on their life. They can't have candy for their whole life. And then when they have access to it, you know what? They kind of go to the opposite end of the spectrum because they've been
Yeah.
so withheld from that, not being able to have some experiences. So yeah, if we dropped laws immediately and government went away, of course there'd be a lot of stuff going down. But
Yeah.
it's also just the way we raise kids, and not just raising them to let them get older, but raising them consciously and having these understandings and building and having them come to an understanding of why to not do something, not just because I said so, but really get
Yep.
into the nuts and bolts of it. Let them ask questions and let them come to that understanding so that they feel like they're making that choice for themselves. Now where they're just being told by some authority figure. And
Yeah.
it's really sad.
Well, that's actually where a lot of the negative programming is installed from our parents, because I said so, because I am the adult. You are installing, by means of repetition, the authority within the child's mind. So as the child, how gets older, how the child's like, well, if I'm a kid now, but how when I become a adult, then I can do exactly what my parents did. And see, that's the problem. And then another thing you brought up is the fear, is the government wants you to stay in fear. There's always some, have some boogeyman, there's always some external threat. What first it was bin Laden, then it was communism, then it was the terrorist, now it's a fake virus, that hasn't been proved. But there's always some external threat. Yeah, because as long as they are projecting, how this off, it puts you in that fight or flight mode. How in that mindset you can't think, you can't take in, have proper information, because you are always on that stimulus response. That means of fight or flight is there in case you are in danger. And you see, they know how our psyche works, they know how our body works, they know how our libido works. So they use it to their advantage and to our disadvantage, because we are ignorant of that. When you were in that mindset of fear, you are constantly hell projecting, hell chemicals hell in your mind. Hell the amygdala is just constantly in overdrive, hell pumping, 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 hell adrenaline, hell all these other hormones, hell all these other, stress factors, to where, certain part of the brain will start to shut down hell over time. And this has actually been proven. It's called cerebral atrophy, because how people don't use certain areas of the brain, and just like a muscle, it will start to shut down. It will start to retard itself. So the reason why people really can't see what's going on and why they can't take in information, because these people have brain damage. Like they literally have brain damage, and they have almost the same kind of brain damage as in like Alzheimer's. Because certain parts of the brain will start to shut down. Well, we have been targeted, held genetically and with chemicals, and with so much fear and with so much stress, especially in these order followers, how these Nazis, they're constantly in situations of stress, constantly in, in situations where the adrenaline is pumping. Adrenaline is one of the worst things for the brain. Like, because it will literally start to erode the brain, hell, in time after time again, to where it will start to, to create holes within the neocortex. And this has been proven. There's a lot of, CAT scans and PET scans that will prove all this. So the reason why these people can't see what's going on, because they are in that fear, and they've been in this fear pretty much their whole life, to where, hell, that prefrontal cortex, it's not working. Like, it's retarded. It's possibly shut down. These people may still have some hope, but it's going to be really, really hard, because they're stuck in, that rigid mind control, and don't want to take in any new means of thought. And mainly, they don't want to admit that they bought into a lie and that they were wrong. So
Yeah, and there's so many aspects as to why someone's pushing away information. Like for me, like I've had a lot of brain fog before and all these things. And sometimes if you're trying to take in new information, it can really give you an uncomfortable sensation in your brain, because it's activating different parts and it doesn't
yeah,
feel good. And so for people, they're like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to do this. I don't want to deal with it. I can't focus on that right now or whatever. It's because they're so conditioned to maybe watching mindless
yeah,
entertainment or things from the CNN or anything like that. So it's outside of their norm. So it's really their brain's been conditioned to focus on certain other things and not different other subjects, and thinking in a different way. So even just that, and then also the nutrition aspect of it, and then just the toxicity aspect of it with food, water, et cetera, et cetera. And then even for me personally, on a personal level, I was looking at porn since I was like 8, 9. And I was
yeah.
using that as a coping mechanism, and it was destroying me. I didn't realize it until I guess I didn't really realize until 2021. Like that was January 7th was the last time I was doing that. And I
Yeah.
had so much brain fog. I had such low energy. It was terrible. And it was literally like you're saying, like uh what were you saying when it was the degradation of like your brain, the word that you
Oh,
used just
the
now?
cerebral
Neuropathy
atrophy.
or yeah, cerebral atrophy. Yeah, so
Yeah.
totally. This thing was not working whatsoever. Too much dopamine was going in all the time, and
Hmm.
my ability to understand how my actions can cause uh, an effect, like the repercussions of my actions. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just in my brainstem. I was a beast, literally. My thoughts, emotions, and actions. 666. I was totally a beast. and it was terrible. And I just could not, like, even if I knew that something bad would happen for me doing it, I was just like, oh, it doesn't matter because this is my
Yeah.
prime directive right now is to do this or do that. And it was terrible. I heard so many people in the course of over the course of like a decade, and it's just so sad. And that was a self-inflicted thing because society, like as you were saying, like with society and just the mind control, it's normal. You're masturbating all the time, it's normal. No, it's not. You're losing a lot of
Yeah.
testosterone too while you're at it.
Yeah.
So it's just really really sad. And my friend Nicholas, thanks so much for coming on here, man. And then he brings up another example. How about prohibition of alcohol? And then after realizing people were doing it anyway, they legalized it, taxed it for profit, even though drinking and driving causes hundreds of thousands of deaths per year. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And so going on from that, I want to talk about mind control. And if you want to go into some of the methods that can and have been used against people and how we can sort of build that knowledge base and just other forms of or other ways that we can protect ourselves from that mind control.
Sure. Well, I like to define, mind control, and I want to say David Icke kind of like kind of sum this up is giving someone limited, information because you were giving him, a limited set of data, a limited set of information, a limited set of, like of knowledge. And then therefore we take in that limited set of knowledge and then we build our worldview. We start to build and construct our reality based on that limited set of data, based on that limited set of information, based on that limited set of knowledge. And therefore, as we start to construct, these viewpoints, how these beliefs, how ways we see ourselves, way we see the world, how ways that we see others, it is based on that limited set of information. And through time, it starts to become more rigid, those beliefs start to become more hardened. But unbeknownst to us, there is way more, to that information that exists outside of what we have been told. And that's really how I like to sum up mind control. And, mind control, you can have like hardcore, like trauma-based mind control, or you have like the soft core, have mind control, the things that are subtle. And that's where, like how I kind of deal with it's a subtle soft core. And that's kind of where my definition is headed toward. Because we all have been given that limited set of information. We all think that we are just, physical 5 sense, beings, operating on a stimulus, response, just a sexual, desire, or if you want to go with the biblical, worldview, we're all evil, we're all sinners, once again, that is a limited set of information because it is so inaccurate. Or if you want to go with, the whole Darwin, worldview, once again, that is a limited set of information that there is so much more, held to the picture. And we've taken these ideas and we have ran with it to the point we have been run over by them, and some of the techniques of mind control, um, the the use of perverted archetype symbolism. And what I mean by that, if you look in your room, you're going to see a lot of symbols, but two of the main symbols I'm pretty sure you're going to use, and if you look within your house, is the square and the rectangle. I mean, just look at the monitor, yeah, it's a square. Look at your laptop, it's a square, or it's a rectangle. Look at your phone. Hell, look at your windows. Hell, look at your doors. Hell, look at your stovetop. It is squares and rectangles all around you. But the reason for that, because that square is a box. It is entrapment. It is it, it is rigid, it is base, it is ignorance. The square is a foundational building block. How that's why the masons use the brick, because it is a good foundation, because it is a strong foundation when it comes to building. But the problem is they use it in a perverted, hell, a perverted way, like with this technology that ultimately is enslaving us. We are being trapped inside of a box. Just look at a cage. If you ever gone to a jail, it's a square, because you put things in a box. It means entrapment. How you're locked inside, how you can't get out. And it can also represent compartmentalization, and that's what we see is a lot of compartmentalization, not only with the way we think, but the way how the way society is structured. So yeah, just start to look around, and you will start to see these squares. You will start to see how how these rectangles, and this is a perverted form. And another way that we have been, have put under mind control is people think that symbols are good or bad, which that is not true. a symbol in and of itself doesn't have an inherent meaning. It is up to the person who takes that symbol in, and they are the ones who give it power. They are the ones who give it meaning. Now, mind you, I said that the square is usually associated, with these means of ignorance, with these means of rigidity. It has been associated with stability, but that doesn't mean that that is it inherent quality meaning. Another way that we have been put under mind control is the obfuscation of words. And this is why I started off with defining what mind control is with limited set of information. Well, what if you give someone an inaccurate definition of what a word means? So then they start to use these words, they start to construct, hell, these worldviews, hell, like the word anarchy. People still think that it means chaos. People still think that it means evil, just like with hell, the word occult. People still think that it means Satanism or demonism. Like, no, because hell, once again, these are forms of mind control. They have given you inaccurate, deliberate, wrong definitions of words, and therefore you believe in it, and they control you at that base level because you start to construct your worldview and the way you see others, the way you see, like other people, and the way you see the world. Because you'll see someone who use that word, anarchy. Oh, you just wanted to be chaos, or they'll equate it to what democratic socialism or communism. It's like wrong and inaccurate. So this is how mind control works. It is sorcery. They use the language to put it out there. That's what people don't get. The sorcerer just use the voice. The sorcerer understands all this stuff. He whispers, he sings, he chants. The sorcerer is the pied piper. They put the shit out there into the public consciousness, and they get the useful fucking idiots to buy into it. And the useful fucking idiots buy into it, and they start to act on it. That's how mind control works. That's how they have used this mind control to create their dark new world order. And they are using it, to this day. I mean, just look at what happened in Canada, hell, with all the fucking order followers. I don't agree with what the truckers did as far as going to the government and asking for their rights, but I understand it, and they have every fucking right to do that. But hell, then again, fucking a tyrant just used words, didn't do the action himself. He got other fucking useful idiots to come in and install the will by way of coercion, by way of violence, by way of theft, because we all have seen the videos of what happened. So that's mind control right there. And that is cult mentality, because cult mentality and mind control are just the same thing. Because in the cult mentality, the cult leader gives you limited sets of data, gives you that limited form of information, and then the cult member takes the information and then runs with it, starts to construct their worldview, starts to, he'll believe in it, buys into that mind control. So that's really how we have been indoctrinated and in mind control. And if you want to go deeper into the techniques, the four main techniques of cults, you can look at it as the main one, which is isolation. Just look at the whole public school system. Just look at the whole corporate world. Just look at in politics or in universities. Whenever you go join something, they always isolate you from everyone else to get the data, to get the information installed within your psyche. Then comes the herd conformity. You have to be that team player. They have to smash your identity. They have to smash your individualism. They have to smash your free will. They have to smash your creativity. They have to smash the way that you are. You are given the group identity. You have to act like everyone else. You use words like we, they, them, us. You're a team player. There's no I. There's no ego. There's no you. Hell, there's no me. It's all about getting you to adopt the herd conformity, the herd mentality, the collectivism, held the group. Then you have held repetition. You have repeat all these steps over and over. You go to the group meetings, you go to the group settings, you all may go to lunch together, you all may have the same how uniforms, how repetition over and over and over and over and over again. And then that leads to the last technique, fear and trauma. Hell, you don't want to be fired, hell, or you don't want to lose your job, you lose your house. It's always fear. Well, how this could happen, and then the mind starts running into that chaos, hell, into that fear, and then the mind starts spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and it can never really slow the fuck down to actually, take in more information and grasp the reality of the situation that you have bought into a cult. And these are the same techniques that we all have gone through with schooling, the same techniques that is used in the corporate world And I've actually talked to people and done videos, hell, about this and the same techniques that the order followers have gone through, and the same techniques that the military has gone through.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that explanation, because that goes right into our next topic, which is cult mentality and what constitutes a cult. You just explained it. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
Um,
You mind if I just kind of define what a cult are? Like what the definition of a cult is:
yeah,
a
please do.
group, a group or sect that has beliefs or an ideology that is considered dangerous to people who are not within that sect or that group. So we can look at the biggest cult of all time, which is government. The government will use tactics, will use violence, will use theft, not only just against people who aren't within the cult, but also within their own health members. So people like us, who want to be free, who want to abide by natural law, because we don't think like them, they will use violence. They will try to use coercion to install their will onto us. It was no different than any of the other cults from the ancient world, because cults have been around from the time of man's first day on this planet. And the cult mentality actually goes back to the actual theological cults. Hell, the whole solar cult, the whole moon cult, the whole cult held the planets and the stars, and that actually goes even further to nature worship. But that was more of in tune with nature, and then it got perverted. How once we you know got traumatized, and that's a whole nother story in of itself.
Wow. Yeah, it's yeah, it's really crazy, and yeah, I totally see that cult mentality around all the time, and even people that are in this kind of freedom mindset and things along those lines. Um, I mean, even some YouTubers. I mean, I guess I don't want to name names. I don't have a problem doing it,
Yeah.
but yeah, they just don't talk about natural law. Like they're talking about what's going on. They're creating events. They're doing all these things, but then that's just not even on the discussion table of bringing this up. And for me, it's the fundamental aspect of like
Yep.
how we get there. It's not just nonviolence, or it's not just like understanding how we can create a homestead and all these things and how we can build new systems, but
Yeah.
it's the underlying principles before we even
Yep.
start. And
Yeah.
it's not just about bringing in a group of people and saying, oh well, you guys don't like vaccines and you don't like vaccines, so let's just come together. No, it's, what are you a good person? What do you believe in? What do you support? What are you all about? And it's I don't know. It's gonna be hard for us to really succeed if we're not talking about this. It's really unfortunate. So many people are dropping the ball on this, and like I try talking to people about this all the time, and a lot of people agree with me, and they even say, "Well, not everybody has your mindset though." Exactly. Exactly. What does that tell you? It's telling you
Yeah.
it's how you're brought up. What movies do you watch? What music do you listen to? Like, who do you surround yourself with? Yeah, of course yeah, your mindset's great, Nick, but it's not everyone has that mindset. Okay. Well, what does that mean then? It means it's hard work. It's not just taking a pill, aka voting, and you're just
Yep.
magically gonna be better. No, have we not learned by now? I'm only 29 years old. I only got into politics in 2008. It only took a couple of years for me to realize that nothing's changing. How are people in their 60s and 70s and still supporting this stuff? What have they really solved? Nothing. No root problems have been solved. Blow it out your ass. They're not fixing anything, guys. Let's wake up at least to that fact. We can't even just
Yeah.
acknowledge that. Oh, a politician's lying if he's talking. Okay, well then what are you doing still? Like, everyone agrees on that. Like,
Yeah.
politicians are lying if they're opening up, if they're just talking, and then we're still just saying, "Oh, we need them."
But you see, that's the mind control right there, because they think that they can put the right person in office to fix the problems for them, rather than them fix the problem themselves by going, within. You see, it goes back to mind control, to that negative programming from the time of their birth. The mind control, has been hitting them. So through repetition, through repetition, through repetition, through repetition, through repetition, on and on and on for years and years and years, to decades and decades and decades, they are operating off of negative programming, because that's all that they know is that negative programming. So anything outside of that equals death. Anything outside of that equals change. Anything outside of that is the unknown. And that's the problem with the cult mentality, because remember the code mentality, outsiders are dangerous. Oh, this person is not part of the group. This person is the enemy. It gets back to mind control and the code mentality. And we honestly have to give these social engineers a round of applause because they have done a masterful job at literally controlling people's minds because the information is in front of them. There's so much information still, even with all the censorship and the propaganda, and people still don't see it because they don't even want to see it because they are stuck in their attachment, they are stuck to their comfort, and most of them are still living in the animalistic mindset. So as long as they have shelter, as long as they have food, as long as they have water, and as long as they have some ass, hell, then that's all that they really care about. Just like an animal.
Yeah. And it's another thing that I forgot to mention is just the ability to be honest with yourself. So many people don't have that ability. And I had major depression from 16 years old to 23 years old. It's because, first off, I didn't have the mental tools in order to deal with negative outcomes or negative situations. So I had no idea of how to handle that mentally. But then it was also because I couldn't lie to myself. I had to be real about it. I was the bad guy in that scenario. I was hurt or I was traumatized from all this porn and I made a mistake and I cheated on my girlfriend and that's what happened, but I just couldn't lie to myself about it. So I was always in that reality. So it was so difficult for me to get out of that. But right now it's a blessing because I can still be doing a lot of good work, but I can still be honest with myself and say, you know what, in this area I'm not doing very well. Maybe doing some journaling at times and saying, you know what, yeah, I'm very inconsistent in this or in that. And so many people are still just in their own little bubble and just lie to themselves all the time because it's just more comfortable. It's just, oh, it was them, it was their problem, it was their fault for doing this. No, like look at yourself, be honest. It can be very difficult for me. At least it's easy because I've just always been like that. But it's just also it's just another huge aspect to it. And so that's a good transition, I guess, to trauma and shadow work and just ways that we can do some of this internal work on ourselves. So if you want to break out shadow work and just delve into what that means for people that are unaware of what that is, and then just methods, and then maybe any advice and tips you have for people that are going through anything right
Sure.
now.
Sure. Well, let's, help, look at the word trauma first because that is a wound, to hurt, to split or to separate. It could be a physical, wound, or it can be a mental wound. It could be a psychological wound. It can be an emotional wound, and it can even be a spiritual wound. So that's what the word means. But if you go a little bit further in etymological roots, from its Proto-Indo-European, it means to cut or to twist, to puncture. But in its Sanskrit form, it means to go beyond. It means to almost like to convert. So it's almost like in healing our trauma or healing that part of ourselves, and that's how we can transcend. Hell, that's how we can convert, or we can elevate our levels of consciousness. How we can really start to grow. And what shadow work is a means to actually heal that trauma, to actually go within yourself, because shadow work is internal. It's a process, how mentally and psychologically and emotionally, bringing up those traumas, you bringing up those dark aspects that you are not comfortable with, or what we would call, negative, those aspects about yourself that you may not like, and is actually bringing it up to the surface and actually dealing with that and actually healing with that, bringing it to the conscious level, so it's not so much being how buried. Because when we look at the word enlightenment, not necessarily like the new age sense, but light, not being weighed down. Trauma will weigh you down. Trauma will bind you. Trauma will hold you down. So we're talking about bringing it up and elevating it and rising it to the conscious level, because that's what it's going to do. When you're going through that shadow work, it's going to make you lighter in the mental realm, in the psychological realm, grant you more clarity, grant you more understanding about yourself. So that's really what the shadow work is supposed to do. It is the internal manifestation of you going within yourself to heal those aspects, those insecurities, those means of imperfection, which perfection is not going to happen, please understand that. But it is the insecurity and aspects about ourselves, because we all have, trauma, just in many different shapes and many different forms, but not many people are willing to heal that. And so as far as steps, um I always have to say that what works for me or works for you may not work for everyone else. So this is an individual process that is lifelong. That's not going to happen overnight. So, you have to be willing to engage in your own shadow. You have to be willing to take off your own mask and admit that you was wrong, because the mask was way hip before, the whole COVID stuff. People were wearing a mask pretty much their whole life, but it is in taking that mask off, you really see who you truly are. So in saying that, one of the things that that really helped me was neuro linguistic programming. It was because I didn't really have communication skills. How my speech wasn't anywhere that how I wanted it to be. So I would practice that. And through time, because neuro linguistic programming is just how neuro, the mind, the brain, how linguistics, the words, and then programming is using structured language to pretty much program or penetrate people's mind to get you to actually get your message held across, to gain a better means of communication. And how, mind you, NLP can be used in a negative mindset to actually install how negative programming to get someone to buy something that they don't really want. How this is what sales, how salesmen or saleswomen do. They have all these techniques, and structured language, how they use embedded commands, they talk in nice, nice pleasing tones. They get you to imagine things, and then they hit you with those embedded commands. So NLP actually helped me as far as how with my speech, because the speech was one of the main fears as far as holding me back. And I knew from a conscious level that held that my communication skills were not where I wanted them to be. So I practiced, how got in front of the mirror, started, writing things down, because you write it down, you see it on paper, how you can actually cognize it a little bit better. And another way, as far as seeing yourself in front of the mirror, people don't want to look at themselves in the mirror because they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel adequate with their physical looks, or there may be something with it, like freaking on their body that they are not comfortable with. So one of the things that I started doing is when I got out of the shower, just stand there and look at yourself in the mirror, because you are in that vulnerable, naked state. You are in that state where you are the most vulnerable. So just start and look at yourself. Get comfortable with yourself. Ask yourself these mental questions. Am I comfortable in my own skin? That's what a lot of people don't realize, is they are not even comfortable in their own skin. So yeah, I was doing that for about a minute, held 2 minutes, and start to do it for longer, because you want to always help progress. And then that got me to actually sit down in a room, turn off all the technology, put the phone away, and just contemplate, get in my own head, just listen to whatever came up, and literally focus on what was coming into my own mind. And I kind of separate that a little bit from meditation, because meditation, how you a little bit more, how cognizant, and will focus on my breathing techniques. But in these means of contemplation, I would literally just sit in the room and just close my eyes and get deep into my own head and start to question, like, hey, why do I believe the things that I believe in? Are were these beliefs installed? Were these beliefs put there by someone else? Getting to the why, getting to the root, that really helped me a lot. And I would say, my trauma may not have been as worse, as some people. And this is kind of a more direct, health approach. And there are other means that are like soft or emotional freedom technique. The whole tapping, I'm not I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but you can tap on like certain pressures, certain meridian lines, and it will actually help relieve pressure. It can actually help relieve stress. It can actually help relieve anxiety. I did that for about 6 years because that was quick, but that takes a little bit more longer. And that's really for people with like hardcore trauma. And I've actually introduced this, to some other people. And my co-host, Autumn, shout out to Autumn, she taps, and she's also helped introduce tapping to other people. And that's a good quick way to kind of refocus and bring yourself back down in these means of tapping, because trauma and energy is not only stored in our mind, but it can also be stored within our body. And if you are familiar, with some of the the ancient techniques, and like the flow of energy, just like with any form of flow, it can get backed up, it can get clogged. Well, the same thing can happen within our body, and it is through that form of release, in that form of letting go, that you start to heal, hell, from yourself. So EFT really helped me too, but that was kind of more a prolonged, hell, longer sense. How when Mark Passio talked about the whole direct approach, I'm like, man, that was how I started, was just looking at myself in the mirror. Like I say, I was butt ass naked, just like just getting comfortable, with myself in that most vulnerable spot, because people need to get comfortable with their own skin, and that's something that people don't really want to do. And then the benefits of that shadow work, it gives you that inner fulfillment. It gives you that inner clarity. You start to understand your true purpose. You start to get a better sense of focus. You start to get a better sense of self. You start to really live in the now. And that's the benefits of shadow work. So hopefully people can take those as a tip. But help mind you, you may bring up some dark things that you are not consciously aware of. You may bring up some emotions that have been stored. It's going to be times where you're going to get mad. It's going to be times where you want to scream. It's going to be times where you want to break down. I know I've gone through it, but it is constantly, pushing yourself, hell, not stopping, just not settling, constantly pushing yourself, and be willing to face that shadow, be willing to face, hell, that darkness, because at the end of that journey, which, ain't really never really gonna stop, but you'll start to see the benefits, hell, you can take, sorry, it's a car that just started. I hope it's not coming through.
A little bit, and it's not a big deal at all.
All right, you can take the fear and the negative, and how you can weigh that, but you can take the benefits, because I promise you, anyone who started this process will tell you that there are so much more benefits than there are, negative. But it's a hard process, so the best thing that I can tell someone is hell, number one, if you have kids, you need to be introducing these topics, how these means of consciousness, how natural law, how these modalities, everything that we are talking about. So therefore, their development, their growth won't be as stunted as, how yours was, because kids can learn these means, and we don't really bring up these psychological, these emotional, these spiritual concepts within children, but children have all of these concepts within their own psyche, and they possibly understand it even better, because they are more closer toward life and creation, than we were, and they haven't gone through that programming. So, if you do have kids, you can introduce these concepts, and as they get older, you can start to help for introduce more, because that will make the shadow work so much easier later on in life, because you are setting them up and building that foundation to where, that shadow work or that trauma may not be as bad, because we're all going to experience trauma at some level of degree, but some trauma is going to be way, way, way more worse, hell, than others. So be willing to explore, hell, be willing to open up your mind, be willing to open up your heart, be willing to forgive yourself, be willing to admit that you was wrong, be willing to admit that you are not perfect, be willing to admit that you're going to make mistakes. That's what you have to be willing to do when going through that shadow work, and be willing to admit that, yes, I have bought into a lie, yes, I was engaged in immoral behavior. That's what it's going to take in order for us to really pull ourselves out of the situation, because the understanding of natural law and the shadow work, those are the two most important things that we can start, doing in order to get to the requirements that we say that we want to build a world in freedom.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you described it for that long. That was like 10 minutes. It didn't even feel like it. It felt like 2 seconds. That was fantastic. And I hope that at least if one person watches this and is inspired by that and is willing to, take a shower or whatever, and then look at themselves in the mirror, or just at any point in time, because I know how that is for me, or how it was for me. So if anyone, just one person gets inspired by that, it's worth it for me. I just appreciate you delving into it like that. And just as my own personal aside, like last year, 2020 was a shit show with me and my girlfriend at the time, or the person I was seeing. I hurt her so badly, and it really came back around in 2021. And she was leaving me for somebody else, and I didn't want to lose her. So I really started doing this finally. My back was up against the
Mhm.
wall, and I stopped watching porn. I stopped masturbating. I stopped playing video games. I stopped, took about a week or so, but I stopped smoking weed. and then like my eyes were literally looking, they looked different, like just within a couple
Mhm.
days, just from me not doing that stuff. And it got to, within just a few days or whatever, like I was getting, I was able to look at myself in the mirror for the first time and actually be able to say positive things for the first time in my life, and be able to mean it and not feel like it was awkward or like I was kind of like just lying to myself. Um, I actually felt genuine about it, and
Yep.
I had a smile on my face, and I'm saying, "You're doing such a great job, man. You've never been able to do this before. That's fantastic. Good job at doing this today." And I was being really grateful for everything that was going on in my life, being able to go into a warm house when it was winter time, or having my mom around me at the time and her dogs, and it just, yeah, and it's the shadow work was brutal because I was losing her, or like on the cusp of losing her, for 3 months, and then I was also doing the hardest thing in my life, and then I was also spilling some sexual secrets to my family and things that I've done, and that was extremely awkward and extremely
Yep.
uncomfortable, and I was thinking I was gonna be, like, shamed or shunned by my mom or anything like that, and so there's a lot of fear too, a lot of anxiety, and
Yep.
but then it's just that huge hurdle at times, and then once you get past that, it's just like, "Holy shit, am
Yeah.
I feeling like I'm going at, like, 100 miles an hour?" And I just feel like a huge weight's lifted off of me, and I'm able to just, just go to where I need to go now, like, and like you were saying with purpose and finding your purpose, what are you all about? What's fulfilling for you? That's the thing. I was taking out this inauthentic self, and like all the things that I found fulfillment in, and I went to the things that I was still doing, like the interviews and content creation, and I wasn't conflicted anymore. I was finally finding that kind of balance and that kind of cohesion within myself, my thoughts, emotions, and actions. So I was elevating myself. So it was really, really difficult. And like you're saying, like there could be times when you're screaming and crying, or you want to punch something, or you want to maybe end your own life because of just all the trauma you've been through. But it's there are going to be those hard days for sure during
Yeah.
this process. And unfortunately, I didn't keep going at that time. I got really far ahead, but then I just said, you know what, I feel good, I feel great. So I just didn't
Yeah.
keep at it with the same intensity, and so that led to more issues. That's what happens, I didn't learn the lesson enough. So now I've learned the lesson enough. Unfortunately, it took a lot of pain and suicidal thoughts and all this other stuff, and then bringing video games and weed back into the mix because I wanted to comfort myself. And
Yeah.
it is hard. It is very hard, and it's one of the scariest things that people can do. Even for me, going through that process and knowing how beneficial it is, I can still feel stagnated on my own accord. Like I'm personally stagnating myself by not doing this continuously. So
Yeah.
it's very, very hard. And I'm so glad that you're on here right now and talking to me, because like you're saying, like the speech and the communication was the hard part for you. So the fact that you're on here, it's incredible, and I appreciate it so much that you're doing your content creation and all that stuff. So as we're wrapping up, I want people to be able to know where they can find you, where they can support your work. And as you describe that, I'll show your One Great Work Network platform, and just show them some of the awesome stuff that you're creating.
Sure, sure. I am on YouTube slash BandTube slash FascistTube. I am on Odyssey. I am on BitChute, and I am on the One Great Work Network. I do a lot of presentations, and then I do a show with my beautiful co-host Autumn, and she really inspired me, and she really supported me, and we have always shared ideas, and then I also do just other interviews with other people, but mainly just trying to get to the heart and the root of the matter. How these hazardous ideologies, just trying to get people to really explore the mental realm, and of course to understand how natural law, and yeah, that's really how what my work is about, and how that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. And just as a personal quick question, what would you say is like your best interview, or like the video you're most proud of?
Oh, that would be with me and Autumn. This was our second most recent one. Why do people fear real freedom? I think we both came with some amazing energy, and yeah, that right there. Yeah, why do people fear real freedom? We both came up with some things that how we was talking about, or how that we discovered, and we brought them to the table, and it was just a good conversation, and hopefully to bring more awareness to why is it that people fear these things, because they shouldn't be feared, because the fear is just an illusion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to end it on that. That's great. And I want definitely want to watch that. I'll probably be the first one to watch then. If that's the one that you're most proud of, I have to watch that one first.
Yes,
So yeah, Brandon, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on here on such short notice and just
yes,
being open to it. And just I think this was a fantastic conversation. It means a lot to me. And I know that I don't know if I'm gonna say your name right, but I'm not even gonna try it. But she's like, yeah, I'm inspired and I appreciate your knowledge. So we reached one person at least already.
yes.
So
Thank you
thank
for
you
having
so
me
much.
on.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Will, tell the truth. Will has inspired me too, man. Oh, his animation, his presentations, man. Freaking Will is amazing. I hope everyone goes and checks out, the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference and all the videos that have been posted, man. It was amazing. And shout out to all of those presenters.
yeah, absolutely. All right, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. And if you just want to stay on just for a quick couple minutes afterwards, I'd love to be able to just chat after this. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.
Yeah, take care.